MLB The Show actually did it. 95 Eury Perez Future Star card for the Marlins is out, and if you see the attributes in the pitch mix, he reminds you a lot of Edward Cabrera from MLB The Show 21 last year. And in case you did not play with Edward Cabrera last year, you may or may not know this card was an absolute problem in ranked seasons games, especially on Hall of Fame difficulty for like the entirety of the year last year. So we're gonna take a deep dive on Eury Perez, compare him to Edward Cabrera in his card last year, go through what is similar and what's different between the two cards, and try to piece together why Eury Perez here might be a really good card to use on your ranked seasons teams. Let's get into it. You need to get 15 wins in the Future Ain't Far event to get him. If you can't play this event, do not fret too much. He should be available in this rewind pack in any future events. They've consistently been dropping these rewind packs. So I think his price will get relatively cheap. People are paying 300K for him right now because they're trying to get videos out or maybe one of one parallel him. He is going to be definitely a more affordable starting pitcher option and really bang for your buck for the stubs. MJ Melendez is another award, but I don't want to talk about him much. Should be a solid catcher for sure. Especially on All-Star and Hall of Fame. Difficulty to swing is butter. Again, I don't think he's the big one here. The big one is Eury Perez. Let's go through the attributes first and try to piece together why this card might be really good without even looking at Edward Cabrera. The stamina is a smidgen low, but 91 stamina is definitely not problematic. You're probably going to still be able to pitch effectively 6, 7, 8 innings consistently, especially if you're efficient with your pitches. The hits per 9 at 100 is great at this point in the game. 96 Ks per 9 is also very good at this point in the game. The walks per 9, a little lower. He's not going to have the best control, but he's someone that has good stuff, and the pitches are going to really make up for the lack of control. Homers per 9 is no effect on line. Pitching clutch is definitely, it's somewhat valuable. Control is definitely a smidgen lower, but 86 control is pretty good. But you see the velocity and break, and you see where this card is really good. The velocity and the break in his pitches, really good. And speaking of the pitch mix, sinker has outliers, so that means that the sinker is going to hit higher velocities. It's going to be thrown probably 96, 97, 98 pretty regularly. It is a little slower than how outlier was last year. If you use live series Corbin Burns card, he has outlier on his sinker. The pitch velocity will be somewhat similar, but a big difference is he has a lot more break on that sinker. That sinker should be a very effective pitch, especially for folks on Hall of Fame and Legend difficulty. Maybe playing people who have a tougher time timing up the velocity. The circle change, I think, is a nice pitch. He's got good break and solid control on it. I like circle changes a lot. He has a slurve on this card, and a big difference between him and Edward Cabrera we'll talk about in just a moment, that he has a slurve instead of a slider, and then a four seam is the fourth pitch. Only 4 pitches. For many pitchers, you would maybe think 4 pitches is a deterrent of that card, but the fact this card has 4 pitches, and he has a sinker that's got good velocity, a circle change which would have good vertical movement, and then the slurve which would have good horizontal movement, he's going to be solid with that pitch mix. 1 pitch more would have been maybe better, but I think he'll still be good nonetheless. And now that we're done talking about the attributes on his own, I want to compare him to Edward Cabrera. We'll look at their motions in game and look at them side by side, see if there's any similarities between that. But also look at the attributes in the pitch mix because they're kind of eerily similar. Here's Edward Cabrera, and as you see at Parallel 3 last year, it's a 96 overall. A lot of the attributes are really similar. Stamina, hits, and Ks per 9 are all within a couple points of each other at base attributes. Walks per 9 also pretty similar. Velocity and break, again, eerily similar. They both have outlier on the sinker, and mainly last year, the sinker was the reason he was so effective. Not many, if any, pitchers at that point in the game had outlier on the sinker, and many people have a tough time hitting sinkers in the first place because of the depth of break they may have, like Edward Cabrera's. That break usually gets people late on sinkers in general, but now you add outlier to it, it's very difficult to time that up. But Edward Cabrera, on the other hand, is also a big reason we saw some changes with pinpoint pitching this year. Outlier and sinkers both affect the size of your pars now. So if you're trying to aim a sinker high in the zone this year in comparison to last year, that par is going to be significantly bigger this year. So you're not going to be able to throw high sinkers or anything with as much ease. And that was definitely part of the reason Edward Cabrera was good. Definitely not the whole reason, but these slight changes to pinpoint pitching and all that, the kind of counter pitchers like him, should slightly affect Eury Perez and his effectiveness. But even if you can't throw high sinkers regularly, it's definitely going to be a good pitch to throw. It's worth the risk in many scenarios to try to get late swings. And also comparing the two cards side by side, you see The changeup and the slurve are now sliders, curveballs, and changeups on Edward Cabrera's old card. And again, I think this is going to be a big change for people. Having 3 extra breaking balls to work with is valuable, and now you only get 2, which could slightly hurt Eury Perez. But to kind of counter that as well, the circle change I prefer over the regular changeup. They are similar speeds, but the circle changes usually have more depth. And I don't think Edward Cabrera's changeup was one of his best pitches. It was kind of just there. People usually use sinker and slider with him. And then the curveball, even though it's another pitch, I find that not many people use the curveball. Only thing people would maybe do is play the slider and the curveball off each other, or a slider on the corners and then the curveball below the zone. But now you get a slurve that's 79 miles per hour, which is significantly slower than Edward Cabrera's other pitches. So, thing to note with this is that the slurve is not going to be as good of a pitch to go to as that hard-hitting slider was in many scenarios. It's going to be more difficult to get swings and misses on inside pitches on that slurve because it has that depth of movement. You could see the pitch move downward easier. It's a little bit easier of a pitch to take. But also, just since it's so much slower, you're giving more time to react to the slurve since it's only 79 in comparison to Edward's slider last year, which was 85-ish, and many times would probably be thrown faster than that. So, point is, the slider is gone. It's replaced with a slurve that's a little slower that might not be as effective. Now let's go in game and take a look at Eury Perez and Edward Cabrera side by side, because again, I think this is also a factor why Edward Cabrera was so good last year. This is Edward Cabrera's motion in MLB 21, and his motion, I'm like 95% sure, was Corey Kluber's motion from back in the day. So if you're someone who liked Corey Kluber cards, I felt like the release point of that Edward Cabrera card was part of the reason he was so effective. He was kind of 3/4 on his release. He'd throw that slider somewhat across the body, but like it had a lot of break. Now you compare it to Eury Perez in MLB 22, this is his gold card that I'm using. You see with his motion, it's definitely significantly different than Edward Cabrera's. I don't think there's as much deception in it, and I don't think the point of release is much of a factor on Eury. The slurve might not be as good feeling because again, he's not throwing across his body as much as Edward Cabrera was. At least that's what my initial reaction was to seeing these two clips. And here's what they look like overlaid if you want to see how they compare to each other. Shout out to Jay Mills, my boy editing this, for killing the overlay. And yeah, I think looking at these two cards, it is safe to say that Eury Perez should likely be an effective pitcher in ranked seasons. Is he going to be as problematic as Edward Cabrera was last year? I personally do not think so. I mean, as long as Randy Johnson exists, I think he's going to be the guy. And also at this point in the game, we have a more balanced, well-rounded roster of cards that kind of face Eury Perez. When last year when Edward Cabrera dropped, that was Team Affinity 2. That was about like, what, a month or so into the game, give or take? Just a couple months into the game. And at this point, I feel like we have the 95 overalls, which are more well-rounded and prepared to hit someone like Eury Perez in comparison to Edward Cabrera when he was really good. And a lot of the really good hitters we didn't have as much of at that point in the game. So I think right now, I would be a little worried of Eury Perez, but I don't think we have a full-blown Edward Cabrera 2.0. Let me know in the comments how you feel about this card. Are you scared to face this card in ranked seasons? I am going to debut him today, so I'm going to stream, grind at the event, try to get as many wins as I can today, and then debut Eury Perez ASAP so we can come to a final conclusion. So make sure you're subbed to the channel and see that video tomorrow. We'll try to get that up then. And then also make sure you follow my Twitch channel because I will be live streaming all evening and afternoon today playing this event to try to get Eury ASAP. But for real, I appreciate you all watching this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this card in the comments. And I'll see you all again on the next video tomorrow where we test the nightmare to see how real it is.